Justin episode. So did you see our stupid band play?
I was at the dance. I was at the dance, and dude, I mean, you guys are playing Welcome to the Jungle. You guys played Welcome to the Jungle, man.
We did.
You know, and you remember, I don't know if you remember this or not, but in the cafeteria, they used to have like contests every now and again where you could win stuff and they'd like pull your name or something like that. I remember in 8th grade, I won and I had a choice of 2 cassette tapes. And this was 8th grade. And 8th grade is when you guys played, correct? That was the 8th grade dance?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to bring up something that I'm surprised you and Justin didn't bring this up, but I'll bring it up after this.
Okay.
I had a choice of Appetite for Destruction, 5150. Which one do you think I chose?
You took 5150.
Yes, I did. You know me well.
Of course
because
you did.
Even at that time, man, like, yeah, Kiss was my favorite band growing up, but Van Halen is my favorite band of all time. And you know, in terms of that genre, like Eddie Van Halen, I was crushed when he died, you know. But the thing I was going to bring, so yes, I saw you guys play. I was at the dance. I didn't have a date because I was in that group, you know. I didn't have a date, but I went to the dance, and I remember I went to the dance with Pete Huskis.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember this guy, but he lived down the street from me. Jason Curry.
Jason Curry, yep.
Curry, yep. I went with the 2 of them, and what I remember is you guys played, and I remember Welcome to the Jungle.
We did not do Van Halen because we did Just Like Paradise, David Lee Roth.
That's right. That's such a badass song. I love that album, man.
Steve Vai, Billy Sheehan, Greg Bissonette.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Like you know, David Lee Roth too as a front man. But now, who was in that band? I know you said it. Was it you, Don, Justin? Was Jay Golak?
Jay Golak was in it. Yeah.
And then Ricky Seppa playing bass.
Ricky had already bowed out at that point, so
you're about out. So it's just the 4 of you.
Yeah, just the 4. I mean, I ended up playing bass on and off like a little bit later, like Justin's dad or Don would like show me chords and stuff. But yeah, we didn't have a bass player, so some of it was being held down by Jay Golak, you know, using the synthesizer.
He played. Yeah, and I know Jay plays bass too because I've seen him. You know, when in the Joker's Wild and stuff.
Yeah,
he's done some bass stuff when Ken Trewicki wasn't around or whatever. So, but what I wanted to mention, which I was surprised you and Justin didn't mention this, or if you did, maybe it just flew over my head. But you remember in 7th grade, the rock concert that came to Washington Middle School, that band?
Oh my gosh. Wait a minute. Hold on.
I don't even remember the name.
Did John Cafferty come to our school?
I don't remember.
I think that we were trying to win. The school was trying to win a John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown band contest of some sort to have them, but that wasn't them. No, it was some good, clean band with dudes with long hair, and you know, which was the thing at the time because that was already. You know, the heyday of, the beginning of the heydays of the 80s hair band. Yeah.
But they weren't, I know they had like spandex and stuff like that. And like the bandanas because they sold the bandanas you could buy. I don't remember the name of the
One
group.
dude was wearing Zubaz instead of the spandex.
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Remember the Zubaz?
You know, oh yeah. Yeah. But here's a band that I got into, a group that I got into in middle school. Which I guess they weren't punk at the time anymore because they had gone in a different direction, but it's what solidified them and made a name for themselves. But, you know, in 6th grade is when I got into the Beastie Boys.
Yeah.
You know, that's when the License to Ill album came out. I had no idea of their past. I had no idea of that. I just knew that there were these, I'd listened to rap before, you know, but these were like 3 white guys, all Jewish,
mm-hmm.
playing rapping over rock and roll riffs. And even at that time, I just knew, I didn't know who was it
Kerry King from Slayer playing lead.
I knew that was like some heavy stuff, man. You know, that was some heavy stuff, and you know, to be so into them and just really not know or understand where they came from, you know, because that was still like, let's see, that was in 6th grade. That was still like 4 years. I was still 4 years away from discovering the whole New York hardcore and New York punk music scene from that time. You know, I mean, middle school is when I finally started getting into punk, and my first punk record or cassette that I ever bought, that I ever heard, first and foremost, was the Dead Milkmen's Big Lizard in My Backyard.
Yeah.
And that was courtesy of our friend Jamie, the one and only Jamie Service.
Yeah, and he remained a Milkmen fan.
Yeah, and going back to the 8th grade dance, the other thing I remember about the 8th grade dance was him and John Richards coming dressed up in identical plaid like suits with the tape measure ties, you know, and the Vision streetwear shoes and all this, and just it was the coolest thing.
They were a striking pair, man. It was funny. Yeah, I mean, everyone kind of stopped, and I think that Jamie spiked his hair up like crazy in that too.
Oh yeah.
Complete rock, punk rock, which is so interesting because everyone was wearing OP.
Yep.
You know, and then it was going away from the surf style, which was very reminiscent of the skate style, but then you're moving it. It was like, you know, the Vision stuff was coming in, Vans were coming in. So there's always that kind of intersection with what's happening in fashion as well. And Justin had mentioned that it's true, because you kind of could tell kind of what people were interested in by what they chose to wear. Now, I don't remember their names, but I will say there were these two kids. And when I was at Washington, I lived on Arch Parkway. So there's Arch Parkway. Yeah. So down the hill from Broad Street and the opposite side of Pratt Street. And there's these two kids. And all I know is I would bum cigarettes from them. And we're like 12. And they had older brothers. They always had cigarettes. And there was this place that was right near Washington that if you had money, they had like single cigarettes out on the counter. And, you know, if you had the right person on staff, you could go ahead and like drop in like 50 cents or a quarter and you got a cigarette, and they didn't even bat an eyelash. Talk about a different time, right?
Yeah.
But these two kids, Ricky Pelletier. That's one of them.
Yep.
He was the first person that I knew that was into Metallica, because at that point, Kill 'Em All was out. Maybe Ride the Lightning too, I think. Yep. Were both out. And that was almost, I don't want to say scary, but like it kind of was. Like Metallica was this almost like mythical thing at that point in time, because the cover of Kill 'Em All was so violent, right? Just the hammer and the blood and all that. Yeah. So there were these pockets of the Maiden fans, right? The Metallica fans and the AC/DC fans, which is this whole other thing. Now, we look back on it, I think, differently. And when I say look back, it's some of those people that were into the AC/DCs back. How do I phrase this? I remember having a friend of mine who's a musician in some bands say to me, he goes, I made a mistake in middle school and high school because I was paying attention to Malcolm McLaren when I should have been paying attention to Malcolm Young, because AC/DC in many ways was more punk rock than some of the punk rock bands in a lot of ways. But I just remember all these different pockets of individuals, and the record that you mentioned that kind of set off everything was Appetite for Destruction. Yeah. Like that was bridging this gap between all these different worlds. So the hair bands were already out, but they came out as something completely different, where they were absolutely just as comfortable playing with bands like Metallica, and they did, but also playing with the glam bands, but they could also go and be very Stonesy, right?
Yeah.
Very blues based. And the AC/DCs, they were bridging the gap from all these different elements because that's what they were interested in. So I will tell you that I did not have Appetite for Destruction as an actual cassette because I was not allowed to have it. I had very little censorship in my youth, except for that record. So
the cover or the inlay.
The inlay. So I had to dub it from somebody. Somebody gave it to me and said, okay, make a copy and you got to give it back to me because it's like the best thing ever. It might have been Rich Ritchie. I might have borrowed it from him. I'm pretty certain that it was. And I dubbed it and that was my copy and I could only listen to it when my mom wasn't home. And then all the other stuff I had was on vinyl.
Yep.
But that was the only way that I could get Appetite for Destruction. And to
so
think.
She didn't even want you. So she knew the songs and she didn't want you listening to it because of the. Wow.
Yeah.
And it's funny. That's funny because my mom did the same thing with me because Justin is a huge Iron Maiden fan. And he had let me in 6th grade, he had let me borrow the Live After Death cassette. And I brought it home to make a copy of it. And my mom, it was in 6th grade, I was pulling out my homework or the stuff and she saw the cassette and, my parents were never like overly, my mom's a preacher's daughter and everything. But they were never like crazy like that. But that album cover rubbed her the wrong way. And she just did not like it's like, it's not even the devil. This is Eddie. She made me throw it out. I was like, this isn't even mine. She's like, I don't care. Throw it out. So I had to sit there and go into school the next day, tell Justin that my mom made me throw it out. And that I had to buy, I said, I'll buy you another copy of it. But, at this point, I didn't even have like a paper route or anything like that. So it took a little while for me to get the money. And I think I bought it at, was it Zayre's or was it already Ames?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Zayre's. That's right.
So yeah, I ended up buying it there. And, even that, I bought it when I was with my dad and he looked at it. I'm like, Mom made me throw out, and, I told him the truth or whatever. And it's funny because when I was older, already like in my 20s, I thought my mom had forgotten about that. I had completely forgotten about it. And one Christmas she goes, oh, I want you to open this. This one's from me. And it was in the shape of a CD, it was either a CD or a book or something. And when I opened it up, it was the Live After Death CD. And I'm like, she's like, you don't remember I made you throw it out? And I started laughing.
That is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, because she had never done it. Even like with the Twisted Sister stuff, like I was allowed to buy. That's why I did. Maybe it was just, she was in a certain place and that just touched the nerve. Because there's worse. Like I knew she didn't love the Van Halen 1984 album cover with the angel smoking the cigarette,
right,
the baby angel. But even that wasn't like too far fetched. But the Live After Death was that was too much for her at that time.
That was like the midst of the Satanic Panic. You know what I mean? So even the most chill parents, if they had any kind of Christian background, were like, oh, something's going on.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, was what led to the PMRC. You mentioned Twisted Sister and Dee Snider being such a big part of defending that with John Denver.
Yep.
John Denver, Frank Zappa, and Dee Snider are the bastions of free speech and fighting back against the PMRC. What a group. That whole time period, I'm surprised. I guess I'm not. When you compare the two album covers, like Stay Hungry, it's really benign in comparison.
Yeah. The Iron Maiden, we're coming out of the ground, and it just goes to show you how badass that Eddie character is, man. Like every iteration of that, I've never seen Iron Maiden, and I want to go and I want to get myself a badass, because you could buy a T-shirt, but I want to go to the concert and buy a T-shirt, man. Like that's just I remember like every time Iron Maiden came out with an album. Like my favorite Iron Maiden video is Wasted Years because they show all the different Eddies.
Oh, interesting. Video, So I know some people malign like Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, But my and any Iron Maiden purists, go